Welcome everyone. I'm very happy to be with you today. And the whole objective is to share a different approach to uptime optimization, looking at the process of taking our headaches every day on how do we ensure that our equipment and our process uptime is optimal from a very holistic perspective. I want to share with you different tricks and different ways to ensure that our uptime is not only maximized, but is optimized. And the secret here is the use of visual management tools. So let's move on to the next slide, please. The uptime optimization for most organizations tends to be a flavor of the month. It happens when we need the production most badly out of our production lines, when our customers are knocking our doors or complaining. But actually, uptime optimization is a journey, and it's a journey that has multiple directions. And like a journey, it has a beginning and it doesn't have an end. So it's important that you understand that if you approach uptime as just that one activity that the organization needs to focus on, but especially when something is wrong, then you will lose sight of what is important. And it is that every day, not only one activity needs to be focusing uptime, but rather the sum of multiple activities. So let's turn to the next slide, please. Most organizations tend to have uptime in a very variable manner. And we look at uptime as, wow, some days production is better than others, other days we're not doing so well. And there is a big rush to the organization to, we need to inject improvement, we need to ensure that the output is predictable, that is stable. But if we just do that and we forget that before we improve the process, it's important to bring stability, then we are going to lose focus on what we're doing. So what I want to share with you is that before you jump into dramatic improvement of your process and your equipment, you need to bring the process to be very stable. Why do we want to do that? Because if there is a stability, then there is predictability. And if there is predictability, then you can see where to focus improvement and act on that improvement proactively. You want to click next, please? So that shows that. Now, on the next slide, I want to share with you that creating stability requires three key elements: structure, enablers, and reflection on the alignment between the activities that we are doing to optimize our uptime and the business objectives. At the end of the day, the objective is to deliver cash. It doesn't matter if we are packing cereals or if we are packing meats or perhaps juices. Regardless what the process is, the objective is to deliver some key performance indicators and numbers to the organization. So the alignment between your activities to ensure uptime and those organizational goals are very important. So let's look at the structure. Next, please. So in order to create that stability, the structure comes in place. And what do I mean by that? Is the structure, the next slide is good, please, is the structure of your leadership. So traditionally, organizations have leaders on the top, and then these leaders will communicate to the rest of the organization the goals and the objectives. You want to click next, please? And the organization, team members, and the organization as a whole will receive those directions from the leaders and will go and do. However, when we look at uptime optimization, we're looking at leaning down our operations, breaking the barriers, making the process simple and stable. That requires then that the leadership role has to change. So what we do is what we call inverting the triangle and creating an environment where servant leadership comes in place. Click, please. During this servant leadership model, the team members then are the ones that are going to be telling to the leaders of the organization what is that they need to be successful. Click, please. And then the leaders of the organization are there to provide to the team members what they need to be successful. Click, please. What does it mean there? Well, that means that your role as a leader doesn't disappear. You don't lose command and the control of your organization. You lose the command. You're there to become a facilitator. You're there to become the pivot of success. So Uptime requires a completely different approach to how do you address and show your leadership. You cannot control every single mechanic of your equipment. You cannot control every output of your suppliers. You cannot control every movement of your team members. But what you can control is the enablers that you're giving to your organization to be successful. Next, please. So how do we do this? Well, there is a recipe. We have around 8 different ways to ensure that we integrate visual management to help us with the optimization of our equipment and our processes. It starts with a vision and a mission and a roadmap. We focus on what we call compartmentalizing the noise, establishing anchors, getting organized, creating synergy and focus, creating flow, measuring success, and sustaining. Click, please. All these together then are going to help the organization to optimize their uptime. Let's review each one individually. Next, please. So to create that stability, we are going to bring enablers in place. Next one, please. These enablers then, as it relates to the mission, and a roadmap and compartmentalize the noise, include what we call tools at a very strategic level. And these tools start with something called the step diagnostic, and then it breaks down into different hands-on, very strategic, to the way that become very tactile tools. X matrix, A3, daily report outs, standard work, and visual work instructions. I'm sure many of these words are not new to you, but I want to show you how these links visual management and productivity all together. Next, please. So what is the step diagnostic? The step diagnostic is actually a proprietary tool to Kun Solutions. And with this tool, what we do is we work with the leadership of the organization to create a roadmap for 5 periods of time. These 5 periods could be 5 months, could be 5 quarters, or could be 5 years. And during this exercise, we define key performance indicators that are going to match with the organizational goals and that are going to create a roadmap for implementation to the organization. Now, setting up a KPI and setting up a goal is a good thing, but by itself doesn't do anything. So we do need to have key enablers that once those enablers kick in the organization and start delivering, then are going to turn those KPIs and deliver to the metrics that were expected. So what you see on the screen at the bottom of the column highlighted in blue or pink or green shows those different methodologies and tools that you will use. Now, why is this step diagnostic so important? Is because it's a visioning tool, it's a communication tool. The next one, which is the X matrix, also known as Hush and Carry, is basically a tool where all the activities related to what the organization is looking at acting on and how are they going to execute and what type of results they're expecting and what plans they have comes together all into one document. In this particular document, the advantage that you have is that the team, as a team, can identify what are they going to work on, when, who is responsible, and how these activities for improvement are affecting each one of the organizational goals that the organization needs to reach. So it looks a complicated tool, but it's actually a very fun tool to bring alignment to the organization. Why is it important as a visual management tool? Because if you get this out of the boardroom and you share this with your organization and you share that those improvement projects that you are planning and executing are focused on equipment uptime, are focused on process uptime, then everyone understands what are you talking about and the conversation becomes a standard. Now, once you have identified a project, now we need to break that project into little chunks. We need to control the project. Creating a project and a project timeline and a project list is a good thing, but usually stays with engineering, and very little does the floor understand on how it affects them. So using an A3 allows you to break the project into a month, and within that month then you can identify what are you doing, what is the impact of the activities of improvement that you're acting on, the analysis required, what type of key performance indicators are you expecting, and then you can list each one of those activities, especially those ones that the floor has to execute on. Testing the results, communicating the results, and planning next steps comes in place. So this one particular tool is going to allow you to have very concise, precision-speaking communication with your teams. The next one is daily report outs, and probably the most important visual management of all the ones that are out there. Why? Because it doesn't only combine a visual management tool, but it combines leadership together with the team members to understand the state of the business within a period of time. And it all happens in just 5 minutes. Next, please. What do I mean by that? Well, the use of an enabler, like a dashboard, an enabler that is going to allow you to understand what happened in the business in a 48-hour window. 24 hours, click next, please, where we review what happened on the previous 24 hours, and then we plan what is going to happen on the next 24 hours. When we look at the dashboard, it's not different than the dashboard that you have in your car. When you are driving your car, you know the speed that you're going at, the level of gas that you have, if there is a need to make a change in your oil or no, and so on. When you look at the dashboard in your business, you should be able to tell the state of your business within a glance. Within 30 seconds, you should be able of understanding your P&L, knowing if the equipment is up and running, what type of downtime you have, is everyone present, can we actually man the equipment and run our production plan, are we meeting our targets or no, what type of quality concerns do we have, and what do we need to do to stop the bleeding, to avoid to have any customer complaints. What type of continuous improvement activities are we working on and focusing the team on today? No next month, no next year, today, within the next 24 hours. And most importantly, a time to debrief and reflect on the operation. What went well? What didn't go well? What do we need to do different? And then what needs to do different becomes an action item that needs to be acted on today, maybe this week, maximum within the next month. So don't underestimate this tool, probably the most important one to help you with your uptime. Next one, please. Key for the better use of your dashboard is the implementation of visual key performance indicators. So have tracking tools that the team members can interact with personally. I know we have a lot of technology. I know many of you are very sophisticated in your organizations. I like to have databases, computer systems that spit out reports. But those reports only show us what happened today. We like to display what happened month to day. We want the team members to see the trends. We want the team members to report what was controllable, what was not controllable, and what are they going to do to stop the bleeding, to ensure that the equipment is up and running as planned. So the use of key performance indicators, key within your dashboard. Next, please. Now, leader standard work comes in place. And for many organizations, leader standard work is very taxing. But when you focus the leader standard work on ensuring that you have a plan, you make a plan, and that your team leads, your supervisors, your managers understand their role as a leader and how they have to interact with the floor to ensure that that time, uptime, is always on everyone's mind, then leader standard work takes a different turn. Click, please. Making a plan is important, but you need to work that plan. And if you work that plan, then you will meet your numbers. So working that plan and meeting those numbers is key if you perform it in a 24-hour window again. Working a plan that you can control. Next, please. Visual work instructions come in place, and this is a tool that most food companies are not utilizing very well, and they just use it as a means to keep our friends in the quality department very happy, our registers happy, so we do check the mark in our audits. But when you look at a visual work instruction rather more as a repository for current best practices, then the visual work instruction takes a different turn. And those best practices need to be pictorial. Nowadays, with technologies such as videos and streaming information, you should include those to your best practices and share them. And the whole objective is that the team members, especially when you have short periods of onboarding or processes that require a lot of training, have access to that information at a glance and can gauge how those activities are going to affect the output of the process. Next. When we look at establishing anchors, then there are multiple tools there for you to use. Total Productive Management, also known as TPM, run boards, or even morning market. When we look at TPM, traditionally TPM, understood as total preventive maintenance, is been evolving through the years. We have redefined it as total productive management. Why? Because we include not only technical checks, maintenance checks that the team members, the operators should perform in their equipment, but also we include holistic type of checks related to problem solving or quality or workplace organization, 5S, that the team members can check at the beginning of the shift, during the shift, or even at the end of the shift. When a non-conformance is identified, then they can take this non-conformance and report it in the dashboard. Now, hourly run boards are an amazing tool to ensure uptime. We break those organizational goals, those scheduled goals. We're going to produce X amount of packages within one shift into production hour by hour. And then we ask our team members to report, did they meet the target or no? If they don't report, if they report that they didn't meet the target, then we tied up that red response with a escalation protocol. When do I need maintenance in? When do I need my supervisor? Maybe when do I need my plant manager? When is it important to communicate to the customer that we are not going to be able of fulfilling the requirements? So hourly run boards, great tool to give a voice to your team members to report what is happening, when it happens, not at the end of the shift, not at the end of the week. And morning market, key tool to address quality concerns. I'm sure when you have a non-conformance, very often we know what the problem was, we just need to go and fix it. But we lose visibility of it because we just go and fix it. So when we fix it, we don't bring those changes to bring process stability. Having it in a board and being able to following it up is going to help you. Now, there are issues that you might know how to fix, but require a little bit more of analysis, require maybe more maintenance interaction, or maybe bringing more than one team member in place to solve them. So having them in your morning market board is key so you can do the follow-up. But then you have issues for which you have no idea how to fix, and those ones will require more structured problem solving. So having all those three categories in one board, one area, followed by an A3 is going to get you a long way to ensure that uptime is sustained not only one day, but sustain day over day over day. Next, please. Getting organized. Well, it's probably the most common tool and the most familiar out there. And for that, 5S comes into place. And visual management systems. Now, many years in the food industry have told me that understanding your process is the most important step before you jump into doing 5S. People like to jump into 5S, looks nice, the place looks really shiny, but do you really understand your process? Do you really know that before you set up a 5S program, you need to simplify your process, you need to optimize your process, you need to remove all the waste, you need to understand how it works. So when you place the items that the team members need to perform an efficient operation, they are in the right location, making sure that you have distinctive and separation between food contact, not food contact, equipment contact, all these things is key, especially in the food industry. Don't underestimate what 5S can do for your uptime. And then those visual management systems where the team members can understand the state of the business at a glance. Click, please. So being able to accessing anything within 30 seconds. Now, the next one is creating synergy and focus. Yeah, something as simple as a spaghetti diagram. You won't believe how much is going to help you to visualize the redundancies within your process, to visualize how hard team members have to work to ensure that your equipment is up and running. So go ahead, create a spaghetti diagram, simplify the process, change how you're packaging things, change how your sanitation activities work, make it leaner. You're going to gain 20 to 30% uptime just by working on a spaghetti diagram, guaranteed. Now, there is another tool, click please, that is going to help you in a much more holistic manner. And this tool is the enterprise value stream mapping. Now, sure, I know that many of you are familiar with traditional value stream mapping, and in there, that traditional value stream mapping focuses on the inventory movement. But I want to challenge you to focus on enterprise value stream mapping, where you are looking at the activities that happen behind the scenes in the back office. How do we schedule? How do we release this schedule? How the schedule is presented to the floor? How often do we refresh it? How often do we change it? So creating an enterprise value stream mapping is going to allow you to visualize and communicate in a visual manner the changes that are required to simplify the process and optimize it. Next, please. Measuring progress. Those balance scorecards, yeah, I know you're going to say they're a big pain. They're usually required by corporate. We usually have 80, 90, 180 different KPIs. How am I going to run my business effectively? I agree with you, you don't. But if you distill what is critical to your team and what they can control, if you turn the no controllables into controllables, and you just have specific key performance indicators that the team records on every day on those dashboards and then reports to you on monthly basis, referring to the trends and how they're going to change the trends, suddenly this balanced scorecard becomes your best friend to ensure uptime. Next, please. Now, measuring progress, that OEE, I know that many of you have implemented OEE in your operations, and again, sometimes very hard to track and very, very hard to see the benefits of it. And I'm going to tell you why. Because you forget to focus on micro stoppages. That's the problem. That's where you need to put your eyes on. Do you know how many times your equipment stalls? Blinks, 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 blinks. How many times operators are pushing the boxes, ensuring, pulling the film? Many times. It doesn't get reported. So if you use OEE to see the big losses and then you drive down to where the micro stoppages are and you start addressing the micro stoppages, your uptime is going to increase, guarantee, and then you can focus on what is relevant, the big investments in capital to make a significant change. Next one, please. Sustaining, probably the most difficult one. And sustaining is an activity that organizations have a hard time dealing with. They put a lot of effort on improving. They put a lot of tools and invest a lot of capital, but suddenly they end up in square one very, very quick. Why is that? Well, I'm sorry to tell you, poor leadership. You need to sustain by being part of your process. You need to go to the gemba. You need to stand on the circle. I'm not sure how many of you have heard about standing on the circle, but it's a very, very simple methodology to just identify an area of your business, an area of your plan, when you're going to stand and observe what happens. You're observing the process, not your team members. This is not a performance review of someone. This is an understanding, standing and understanding your process. And taking notes. You know, how many times has the machine stopped? For how long did it stop? How often the operator have to push a quick stop on the machine? How many times the operator have to reload the film? How many times the cycle for cleaning in place have to be rerun because the first time wasn't good? So when you use something like this particular form, which we call the waste matrix, and you identify the type of waste that you have and you measure it, and simply by talking to your team members, you identify opportunities to reduce it or eliminate it, you are going to bring sustainability. You are going to be able to communicate to your team members why the tools that you have implemented are important and engage them. So don't underestimate the power of standing in the circle, going to the floor, having Gemba walks. So with this, I conclude my sharing time with you. I want to reconfirm to you that increasing your uptime is not just one activity. There is not only one tool, one component, but rather the sum of strategic and tactile tools that are going to help you to increase your uptime. Creating a vision and mission and a roadmap, ensuring that you compartmentalize the noise. What is noise? Well, everything that stops you from production, everything that gets that equipment to stop, everything that creates a stress in the organization. Establishing anchors, so when you create improvement, you can follow up with that improvement. So when something goes wrong, you can escalate it and you can act on. Getting organized. So workplace organization is tied up with process optimization. Creating synergy and focus, so you have a tool to communicate to your team members what the objectives are and how are you going to link those objectives to the process improvements. Creating flow, so everyone knows that every time that that machine stops, we are not meeting our targets. Measuring success, ensuring that everyone understands their contributions, what is controllable, what is non-controllable, and how can they turn non-controllables into controllables. And finally, sustaining, showing your leadership, go to the Gemba, communicate to your team members. With that, thank you so much for your time. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much, Mariela. Lots of great information in that presentation. We will now move on to our question and answer part of the session. If anyone has any questions for Mariela, don't forget to post them in the Zoom questions tab now. A few questions have come in during the presentation. Our first one is, what are the best ways for visual systems to prevent production issues that result in downtime and product waste in real time?
Really having that step diagnostic in place. So visual management tools tend to be an activity that is driven by a student, someone in continuous improvement, or a passion manager. But when they are not tied up with organizational goals, they're not tied up with a strategy, then they get lost in the business. So the best way is to have a tool that is presented and continuously communicated to the team. Your step diagnostic.
Another question. The umbrella of lean and visual management contains so many independent enabler methodologies. How do you avoid flavor of the month?
I'm going to tie it up again to having a tool like the X matrix or the A3. So what happens is in the boardroom, we have big visibility. We can see organizational activities, drivers for change. And when we go to the floor, we hold back on the information that we're sharing with our team members. So the best way to share that information is to show them a roadmap, is to show them a plan that is constantly assessed and adjusted. People will understand that priorities change if you communicate that, if you are open and upfront with them. They don't understand why you are moving from the implementation of quick changeovers, for example, down to statistical process control if you don't explain it. That's when they figure that, hey, it's just the flavor of the month, another management activity that next month is going to be forgotten and they're going to jump into something else. So have those strategic tools displayed. Go to the floor. Don't do it only once a year when you're having your planned meetings or once a month. Do it every day. Tie them up with your dashboards. Be very visual.
All right, our next one. How much time should be factored in for staff to complete reports on a daily basis?
Great question. As little as possible. And I know that that is a problem for everyone. Traditionally, it takes around 15 to 20 minutes for an organization that is very focused on collecting the right data and communicating it. If you look at the dashboards that I presented, for example, it takes around 10 to 15 minutes to a leader to compile the information. Why is that? Because the information gets gathered through the entire shift. So you don't have to wait for a long time. You're collecting data points as you go along the day, and then it takes around 5 minutes to review between leads or owners of that board, and 5 minutes to review between the leaders and the team members, and 5 minutes to review between the leaders and the management team and the organization. Shouldn't be more than 15 minutes all together, and more than 5 minutes of interaction between groups.
Okay, next question would be, how do you know when you have an effective visual management system in place?
When you can enter your plan and within 30 seconds and 50 feet, you know the state of your business at a glance. As simple as that. If you have to go and tap people on the shoulder and stop equipment to find out how the process is working, then your visual management is not being effective. If you just enter your plan and you can hear the equipment, you know the sounds, you can see the visual indicators, you go to your dashboard, and without asking any question to any person, you can tell the state of your business, then you know your tools are working.
All right, we got a comment and a question. So great presentation. You touched on maintenance checks and wondering about your thoughts on when a focus on reliability type approach to equipment should happen in the process.
Everywhere. I love that question. Reliability is something that organizations underestimate. They tend to be very reactive. They like to just put band-aids on equipment. They forget that if they have a reliable maintenance system, the process itself becomes very reliable. I will focus on reliability right on from the beginning. If you use your TPM boards and you include reliability type of checks every day, every week, every month, then the rollout of your program is much more easy. And then it doesn't become just a program independent to how the operation runs. So reliability should be a communication that has to happen every day. When we go to the dashboards or we go to the dashboards and we ask to the team members, do you have everything that you need to run today? Is the equipment up and ready to run? That's your opportunity to bring in the reliability question.
Okay, next question. The fear of food safety and product recalls diminishes the need for sense of urgency regarding sanitation and changeover affecting equipment uptime. How do you improve that?
Oh man, I can tell you, that question is really hits my heart, because I know it's a conversation in every business organization. Recalls, we don't want to talk about them. In our business, it starts at $1 million every time that we go on a recall. Recalls on the food industry are a no-no. So we definitely want to avoid them. But when we communicate that to the floor and we say we shall not have a process that can put the business in jeopardy, we should not have recalls, all that we're doing is we're intimidating the team. We're telling them, you know what? Taking your sanitation process and going ahead as long as it requires is okay because we are going to be protected, is taking them to an extreme where they shouldn't be. If you look at sanitation, if you look at GMPs, if you use critical control points as a discussion point on process. So these are activities that are as important as it is to load the equipment, to put the film on the machine, to perform a quality test. And all of them need to have a beginning and an end. And they need to be structured. And there is an expectation that needs to be measured. And we need to get their feedback, their concerns are, and how they're addressing their concerns. So you need to integrate sanitation, GMP, to the process as a whole. The problem is that organizations keep them on separate departments. The sanitation department, is like the maintenance department. Those people over there, we need them, but they're not part of the team really. They are departments that help operations to operate. Change that, break those silos, bring them as a team, measure them as part of the operation.
All right. Thank you once again, Mariela, for a very informative session and answering the great cross-section of questions that have come in from attendees. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure.